Have you ever felt a dull ache deep in your stomach on a day when your heart was heavy, or found your chest tightening as you tried to swallow the anxiety of a stressful week? Most people have, and for generations we've been told that it's all in your head. But what if the creepy truth is that your mental pain is not just in your mind, it's etched into your organs, your tissues, your very biology? Imagine grief leaving scars on the heart, anxiety twisting the gut, or unspoken trauma quietly rewriting the script of your immune system. What if science is finally catching up to the reality our bodies have known all along? Emotional suffering can physically reshape us, sometimes in ways that look like the plot of a psychological horror film. The idea that the mind and body are inextricably connected is not new, but for centuries, the world of medicine and culture at large often separated the two, treating emotional pain as something ethereal or imaginary. Yet the lived experience of millions says otherwise. Think of the ulcer that won't heal after a devastating loss, the chronic headaches that arrive with burnout, or the way heartbreak feels like a blow to the chest. These aren't poetic metaphors. These are measurable, medically recognized symptoms, and today, scientists have begun to unravel the strange pathways that translate mental pain into organ damage. It's unsettling, but it's real. At the heart of this connection is a field known as psychosomatic medicine. Psycho meaning mind, somatic meaning body. This discipline investigates how psychological factors can cause or worsen physical symptoms. Early physicians noticed the link, but without MRI machines or hormone assays, they could only guess at the mechanisms. Now, with advanced imaging and biochemical tools, we know the mind can orchestrate biological changes that rival any physical injury. Consider stress, the body's ancient alarm system. When faced with a threat, whether a predator in the wild or a toxic work environment, our brain triggers a cascade of hormones. Adrenaline and cortisol flood the system, priming us for action. In short bursts, this is life-saving. But when stress becomes chronic, the very chemicals meant to protect us become toxic. Cortisol suppresses the immune system, making us vulnerable to infections. It increases stomach acid, raising the risk of ulcers. It thickens blood, contributing to heart disease. It stokes inflammation, the silent fire now known to underlie conditions from diabetes to depression. The brain, in a bid to survive, can end up sabotaging the body from within. It gets stranger when you look at specific organs. The gut, often called the second brain, is a perfect stage for the drama of mind-body interaction. Embedded within the lining of your intestines is a vast network of neurons, more than in the spinal cord. When you're anxious or traumatized, these nerves light up. The result? Nausea, cramps, diarrhea, or constipation, sometimes so severe they're mistaken for chronic diseases. Irritable bowel syndrome, once dismissed as all in your head, is now recognized as a genuine disorder where psychological stress translates into gut chaos. But it's not just the gut. The heart, too, wears the bruises of emotional pain. In the aftermath of intense grief, people can suffer broken heart syndrome, a real, measurable condition where the heart muscle weakens, mimicking a heart attack. Blood tests, EKGs, even visible changes on cardiac scans, these are not figments of imagination, but the physical echo of sorrow. And the list goes on. Migraines triggered by chronic anxiety, asthma attacks worsened by panic, skin conditions erupting in response to emotional turmoil. What's most disturbing, perhaps, is the way trauma burrows deep, lingering long after the initial wound. Modern neuroscience reveals that experiences of extreme stress, such as childhood abuse, violence, or neglect, leave fingerprints all over the body's regulatory systems. Harvard psychiatrist Bessel van der Kolk, in his influential work, The Body Keeps the Score, documents how trauma doesn't just haunt our thoughts, but literally gets lodged in our muscles, our immune cells, and even our DNA expression. Survivors of trauma often suffer from autoimmune disorders, chronic pain, and mysterious illnesses, decades after the original harm. Studies on veterans with PTSD show elevated risks of heart disease, diabetes, and even cancer. Childhood adversity, tracked over decades, predicts not only emotional struggles but also premature aging and early onset of disease. These findings challenge the comforting notion that time heals all wounds. Sometimes, what isn't spoken or processed finds a new voice in the language of pain, fatigue, or dysfunction. The mechanisms behind these eerie connections are both complex and hauntingly elegant. Chronic psychological stress constantly signals the hypothalamus-pituitary-adrenal (HPA) axis, a hormonal command center deep in the brain. When overactivated, this axis can send waves of cortisol and adrenaline surging through the body, day after day. Over time, the immune system becomes dysregulated sometimes, attacking invaders with too much force, other times falling asleep on the job. This can ignite low-grade inflammation throughout the body, a smoldering fire that damages cells, erodes tissues, and slowly undermines the organs. Even the way we store memories becomes twisted by trauma. Traumatic experiences are often remembered not just as thoughts, but as body sensations. A certain smell, sound, or even posture can set off physical symptoms, tight muscles, shallow breath, or racing heart long after the conscious mind has forgotten. This is why people with a history of trauma often describe feeling hijacked by their own bodies in moments of stress, as if they are reliving the pain all over again. These mind-body scars don't just affect individuals, they ripple out into society. Modern life, with its relentless pace, digital overload, and constant comparison, can quietly amplify psychological distress. The pressure to appear fine while silently struggling drives many to ignore or dismiss symptoms until they explode into full-blown illnesses. Loneliness, increasingly recognized as a public health crisis, has been linked to higher rates of heart disease, weakened immunity, and even earlier death. The body, it seems, has always kept score even when society does not. The stigma around mental health only makes things worse. For years, patients describing physical symptoms tied to stress or sadness were told to toughen up or were dismissed as hypochondriacs. But the evidence now demands we rewrite this narrative. Emotional pain is as real and as deserving of care as any broken bone or infected wound. To ignore it is to invite invisible injuries that may fester for years. So, what do we do with these unsettling truths? For one, they invite us to reconsider the way we define health not as the mere absence of disease, but as a delicate balance between mind and body, thoughts and tissues, feelings and flesh. It's a call to listen, truly listen, to the signals our bodies send when the burdens of the mind become too heavy to bear alone. Recognizing the reality of psychosomatic pain is not about weakness or surrender. In fact, it's an act of courage and self-awareness. When you acknowledge that chronic worry, trauma, or grief can scar your organs as much as your memories, you begin to reclaim agency. You realize that seeking therapy, rest, community, or even small moments of self-compassion isn't just self-care, it's survival. Just as we wouldn't ignore a persistent cough or a broken leg, we shouldn't dismiss the aches and pains that accompany unseen wounds of the heart and mind. There's also an urgent need to transform how society responds to mental pain. From schools to workplaces to healthcare systems, it's time to tear down the artificial wall between emotional and physical well-being. Preventing disease now means tending to the garden of the mind as diligently as we monitor blood pressure or cholesterol. Community support, accessible mental health care, and open conversations about trauma can become powerful medicine, not only soothing invisible wounds, but potentially preventing physical disease before it takes root. The science is clear, and the stories are everywhere. Our bodies and minds are inextricably woven together, and the pain of one inevitably finds expression in the other. Whether through the heartbreak that bruises the heart, the anxiety that twists the gut, or the trauma that echoes through every cell, the message is the same: mental pain leaves marks we cannot afford to ignore. So, the next time your body whispers, aches, or protests in ways you can't explain, pause and listen. Perhaps it's not just muscle or organ that is suffering, but the unspoken burden of the mind seeking release. In the end, understanding this connection might be our most powerful tool for healing not just of the body, but of the whole self.